Imagine navigating a turbulent ocean on a small boat. Every wave representing a different challenge, from lack of information, to social stigma, to physiological and psychological effects. Running after menopause is like trying to find your way in a storm with no compass. In this video, Lindsay and I are going to dive into the often overlooked struggles of running after menopause. I want to be completely honest with you, and in order to do that, I have to share something with you. Yes, running after menopause is indeed worse than you think. But by the end of this video, we will have offered you a beacon of hope in the form of 4 practical solutions to help you get through these challenges and reclaim the joy of running. Let's get to it.
Shona, you've mentioned that running through and after menopause is much harder than most of the females watching this video realize. And we've certainly had that experience at Coach Parry, where a lot of the females that are going through menopause or after menopause really struggle with a lot of these symptoms.
Yes, Lindsay, you're spot on. And that's exactly it. Really, it comes down to, I think most females don't really realize that they're going through perimenopause or menopause, and that's why they actually are struggling. And that could be for a lot of reasons. It could be really down to the lack of information that's given to women at the moment. There's a stigma around being in menopause, and I think that is a big concern, that people don't really want to admit that they are going through menopause because of that social stigma, and then it does have an effect on their running, and so they just never really admit the cause or the root problem.
Okay, Shona, so from a running point of view, the reason why it is so hard is that literally running introduces a stress that we can typically adapt to, but running in and of itself can't be looked at in isolation. And when you are approaching menopause and perimenopause, while you're going through menopause and after menopause, there are a lot of physiological and psychological factors that impact your ability to run. There is a lack of sleep, there is an increase in fatigue, there is a loss of muscle mass, there's an increase in anxiety, weight gain and depression, and all of these factors combine to make it much harder to actually recover from the stress of running.
Exactly, Linz. Females going through menopause often find this experience to be very haywire. Every day is different and haphazard and up and down. And this often leads females to think around whether they should even be running, if it's worth their time running over and above all of these symptoms that they're experiencing.
Shona, this leads me to ask why you should even run. I mean, all these factors combined make running sound like an unpleasant experience. It also makes running seem like a chore and doesn't seem to make any difference anyway. Instead of being something that improves health and well-being, it ends up being a negative experience.
Linz, before I cover how to start running after menopause, let's just dive into some of those speed bumps that you mentioned a bit earlier. You mentioned compromised sleep, and this is a key aspect. There's insomnia, there's also some changes within your thermoregulation, which really causes a lot of night sweats, and for the most part, females in this transition are not getting a lot of sleep and not getting really good sleep as well. That then obviously leads to you mentioned fatigue, and so feeling tired throughout the day. So really that the constant changing and the haphazardness of the hormones going up and down causes females to just feel generally fatigued all day, which is really not bode well for feeling like you want to get out there and run. There is of course also the obvious one in and around weight gain. So many women are complaining about general weight gain, in particular weight gain around the tummy area, and this is down to hormones and changes in hormones, but also really down to a lot of our general activity and how much activity we are now doing compared to times when we were a lot younger. And I know so many females will say, no, I'm definitely doing the same amount of activity, but part of the reason you're not doing as much activity is because you're feeling fatigued and you're not getting sleep, so you're definitely not doing the same amount, and there is just this overall weight gain, which then leads to a cycle of, well, I don't want to go out there and run and train, I'm just not feeling good and wanting to do that. So the motivation levels are low, and you mentioned mood changes and depression, and there are hormonal changes that have shown to have effects on the brain and can lead to actual bouts of depression that needs to be treated medically as well. And many women feel that they are not able to perform the activities of daily living like they used to, or that they just can't run the same way they used to. And that really is down to the fact that they're losing lean muscle mass consistently and if not exponentially over time. And all of these factors then play together and really don't lead for a nice running experience.
To add to that, Shona, a lot of the females are worried about the risk of getting injured. Now, with all these factors that you're talking about, and we're talking about compromised recovery, obviously there is now an increase in injury risk. But fortunately, there are ways that we can mitigate against the risk of getting injury.
Right, Linz, now we can discuss exactly how a female wanting to start running before, during, or after menopause should approach it. From a practical point of view, these are areas that can really affect positive change. For some of them, you might even start seeing changes and positive changes happening instantly, and overall will make running feel easier and make you a better runner. So let's get into the first of the 4 pillars now. The first is recovery. Recovery takes form in a couple of different aspects, but really it comes down to how you structure your training. The key thing with recovery is that I've come to realize that most people don't understand why recovery is important. We like to think that we are getting the benefit of the exercise we're doing while we're doing that exercise. So while you're running or while you're lifting that weight, that is really when your body is getting fitter and stronger, and it's not. When you're doing that exercise, you're out for your run or you're in your yoga class or lifting your weights, the body is actually breaking down. There's muscle fibers that are tearing, there's a lot of systemic failure that happens, and what happens from there is when we recover, the body goes, whoa, I really did not like feeling like that, and it builds itself up and it makes itself a little bit stronger. And that is how we get fitter, faster, stronger. And this is why recovery is so important, because you only actually get the benefits of the work or exercise that you're doing when you recover. And as we get older, we can't necessarily do things the way we used to in our 20s and our 30s. And so we need to have more recovery time. And as I mentioned, this comes down in how we structure our training. A little bit later on, I'll give you some information on how you can get your hands on a resource that'll teach you how to structure your training. Aside from structuring your training, recovery really comes down to 2 main factors. The first of those is sleep, and the second is nutrition. If you can manage to maximize those 2 aspects, so really get some good quality sleep and have some excellent nutrition, you've taken care of 90% of your recovery. Before I move on to the next pillar, which is a non-negotiable, the last aspect of recovery that I want to speak about is pacing. It is really important that we treat our training runs and run them at the correct paces. So we want to make sure that we run our easy runs easy enough so that we allow ourselves enough capacity or recovery time so when it comes to running our hard runs, we are able to run them hard enough. The second pillar, and this is in no way in order of importance because really this pillar is a non-negotiable. This is the pillar that's going to help you combat loss of lean muscle over time. It's going to help you with some bone density, ensuring you have strong bones, but more importantly, really help you with your running. We are losing lean muscle mass as early as our 30s. This is happening in a linear fashion, and as we get closer to 50, it really becomes exponential as a loss. This is the main reason why you are struggling with general activities of daily living and why your running is probably just feeling really hard, like hard work, and that you're getting slower over time. Because we do not have the same muscle capacity to do the work that we're expecting our bodies to do. And so how do we combat this? We use resistance training. This is an absolute non-negotiable. Not only is it going to help you stay injury-free for the loads that running requires, it's also going to help us reverse those effects of aging and that loss of lean muscle mass over time. Resistance training is also really going to help you manage your weight over this time. It helps by increasing our basal metabolic rate, and therefore we are essentially expending more calories throughout the day just by increasing our muscle mass and not necessarily even doing more. I keep saying resistance training and not necessarily strength training, and there's a particular reason for that is because when I say strength training, people often ask me, well, you know, is yoga a form of strength training, or is Pilates a form of strength training? And it is amazing strength training to complement your running. But we are looking particularly here at resistance training. We are wanting to load the muscles and load the bones to make you stronger and to make you a better runner. Don't be scared of the word resistance training. It could be moving your own body weight against itself. Do a push-up. You are essentially pushing your own weight, and that is resistance. You can do exercises with bands or weights, and all of those are really recommended. But the important thing is how we progress that over time. This next pillar is really for those of you who are struggling to manage your weight and you find that it's all sitting around that belly fat. And so this next pillar speaks specifically to this. I know what a lot of you are doing. You are probably restricting your carbohydrate intake in order to try and lose weight, but all you're doing there is cutting out the fuel that your body needs for running. And as a result, your running performance is decreasing. And so it is absolutely pivotal to ensure that we are getting enough carbohydrates and enough calories to match our energy expenditure. Otherwise, our performance will just go down. And so during this time, while we're losing lean muscle mass, we are definitely going to be using strength training to build that back up, but we're going to complement that by increasing our protein intake. Muscle's composition is a protein, and so by taking exogenous or outside sources of protein, we will be complementing that strength training to rebuild that loss of lean muscle mass. And that is really why nutrition as this third pillar is so important. Now we come down to the glue that ties everything together. We have all these different pillars, but how do we make it all work in one? And that comes down to consistency. Consistency is about making sure we do everyday sessions, and every day we're taking a block of a session and building it on top of each other, days on days, weeks on weeks, months on months, years on years. By staying consistent over time, this really allows for good progression and sustainable improvements. I discuss these 4 pillars and more in a lot more detail in my free Running Through Menopause Masterclass. I'm actually hosting another one of these soon. You can sign up by clicking the link on screen.